was diagnosed with HIV at the age of 17. I went to actually a clinic, a public clinic. That's where they discovered that I had TB. I tested and it was devastating for me, I must say.
Boyfriend about too soon to be husband.
I never told him because with me, I talk openly, I have this thing that everybody who knows me knows about my status. So I thought, you know what, he knows already when he approached me. So we met and we started a relationship. Because Nasa Ukwili, you know, I heard her, this is the situation. I never experienced stigma from him. He was always there until today.
This year's national commemoration of World AIDS Day with the theme Towards an HIV-Free Generation, Rise, Act, Protect is centered on celebrating the country's achievement in the last 20 years and on the successes of community involvement towards strengthening efforts in the country's HIV response. Worldwide, around 2 million people have become infected with HIV in 2014, and 1.2 million people have died of AIDS-related illnesses in the same period. In South Africa, a growing HIV pandemic continues to rise, and the need to raise awareness, accelerate progress in HIV/AIDS prevention, treatment, and care remains a critical priority. According to UNAIDS data, 6.8 million people were living with HIV in 2014. So what successes and failures have we had over the last 20 years? Can we end HIV/AIDS in South Africa? Well, stay tuned because this is what we focus on today. We have an esteemed panel of guests to take us through this topic, and that includes the National Department of Health, South African National AIDS Council, Medical Research Council, the Human Sciences Research Council, Treatment Action Campaign, and a person living with HIV. So sit back, relax, and learn from this exciting show ahead. You can interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, and on Twitter at SABC Health Talk. I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Health Talk.
The first case of HIV in South Africa was recorded in 1982. This was to be a start of a long, powerful journey for thousands of South Africans who succumbed to the disease over more than 30 years. The disease progressed to epidemic proportions while the South African government from 1994 first ignored it, then denied that HIV caused AIDS. Pressure from AIDS activists helped to turn the tide and force the government to provide treatment to pregnant mothers to avoid passing the virus to their unborn babies. In 2009, the government declared HIV and AIDS a crisis, and plans were put in place to respond rigorously to stem and tide the infections and to provide treatment for HIV-positive people. With effective HIV treatment and a managed delivery, the risk of mother-to-child transmission has been greatly reduced. President Jacob Zuma announced at the State of the Nation on the 12th of February in 2015 that the country has recorded a 67% reduction of mother-to-child transmission of HIV from 8% to 2.6%. Koketso Mokgethwa is one of the 67% of HIV-positive mothers who are now giving birth to unaffected babies. The 24-year-old was born with HIV in 1991.
I was diagnosed at the age of 9, which is in 2000. And I didn't really understand what was really HIV. I only knew and understood at the age of 13. I didn't take it well.
She and her partner, who is HIV negative, decided to fall pregnant, something that was unheard of more than 30 years ago.
My daughter's name is Karen Mokgethwa. She's 4 years old. She's HIV negative. I planned actually my pregnancy. I spoke to my doctors about my status, and actually my doctors, they explained to me the importance of my treatment. I knew that since then, and I still continue with it. So when I planned her, it was with her father that's also HIV negative at this point. That's my boyfriend that I'm dating at this point in time.
Despite advancement in treatment, some people are still fearful and keep their HIV status a secret.
We still have the stigma around the communities, family, people that's supposed to be supporting you. So it's really affecting a person that's HIV because we need people around us. Like anybody else needs someone. So the support is really more important. So if there's stigma already, it's not going to be possible for me to come out or disclose or talk about my status or even live a healthy life.
Living openly with HIV and AIDS allows people to seek counseling and treatment. For the 24-year-old Koketo, it gave her purpose to live her life fully.
Being HIV positive, one thing that I've learned, and I'm glad that I'm HIV positive, is because of every day changes. Every day is exciting for me because now I have a reason to live. I have a reason to stay positive. So that goes for anyone else. If you know that you're HIV positive, just have a positive mindset.
Currently, 6.8 million South Africans are HIV positive. That's 1 in 5 people aged 15 to 49 years of age. Although people are now living longer because of treatment, government and health authorities are still concerned and working hard to reduce the number of infections.
So how have we fared in tackling HIV over the years? Well, to help us answer these questions, let's welcome our special guests. First up is Pastor Solomon Njama. Pastor Solomon has been living with HIV for the last 23 years and has written a book entitled I Shall Live and Not Die. Welcome to Health Talk, Pastor Solomon.
Thank you for having me, and good morning, viewers.
All right. Next to Pastor Solomon, we have Dr. Nono Simelela. Now, Dr. Nono Simelela is advisor on HIV matters in the Deputy Presidency of South Africa. And I might just add that Dr. Simelela was the first CEO of the South African National AIDS Council. Welcome to Health Talk.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
And next to Dr. Simelela is another special guest that is known very well to this program, Dr. Farid Abdullah. Dr. Farid Abdullah is the current CEO of the South African National AIDS Council. Welcome to Health Talk, Dr.
Thank
Farid.
you.
All right. Perhaps let's just start with you. I mean, overall, we say that we've had successes in tackling HIV/AIDS in South Africa. We've had challenges there and there, and some areas we did very well, some areas we're still struggling, and so on. Let's just track over the last, say, 20, 30 years, from the first time that we had the first recorded case of HIV. Let's start with just awareness programs generally. What's your view in terms of how we've fared over the years?
Well, we have an odd relationship as a nation with the epidemic because, we have one of the largest epidemics in the world.
Right.
And we are so open about HIV in this country, I think more than any other country in the whole world. And a lot of people are on treatment, 3 million people on treatment, so all of those families know about HIV.
Right.
And yet at the same time, when we try to understand what's happening with risky sexual behavior, we see that condom use is still not as high as it should be. Yeah. Too many South Africans still have multiple partnerships. Yeah. Risky sexual behavior is still a problem, and it's almost as though we can't connect these two things. We know so much about HIV, and yet it hasn't translated into the sort of reduction in risk behavior that we need to do better with controlling the epidemic.
Yeah. This is of concern, isn't it so? I mean, you'd imagine that if people have this high knowledge of the problem, that somehow should translate into changes in behavior, isn't that so?
It is a concern, and what it means is that human beings are not vessels into which you pour information and it has a certain impact. Human beings are in an ecosystem, in a society, in a community, where there are other things which influence behaviors, and those are what we call social, structural drivers. The cultural issues, the gender issues. Poor people relate differently to these problems from middle-class people. So the next phase is about understanding those dynamics and making sure that society responds to correcting those things. Otherwise, we'll never get on top of this epidemic.
Yeah, and we should, actually. Dr. Simelela, let's talk about VCT programs. I mean, we've spoken about awareness that I think we've done fairly well there. I mean, quite a lot of people know, at least, about HIV. In terms of testing now, we've had targets, national targets before. How have we fared in that regard?
Well, I think until the launch of the testing campaign, where we set out to test 20 million people in 20 months, testing was happening. As you say, it started with voluntary counseling and testing, where people had to come and say, I'd like to be tested. And that really was not getting us the numbers of people that we needed to get into the system, to know their status and access treatment. And then we moved into a phase where we now said it's offering people counseling and testing, nurses, doctors, and every opportunity that you have when you come into the health system, it must be an opportunity to be used to counsel and test. So I think from the testing campaign, the numbers went up. What we're seeing now is we're not reaching the targets or as many people as we wanted to. Yeah. So we are revitalizing.
Why are we not reaching?
I think the natural reaction, as Dr. Abdullah has said, is you get to a saturation point where people think, oh, okay, so many people have tested, so many people are on treatment, so I'm sure we're doing okay, So people don't actually realize their own level of risk. So it's more about being aware that at every interaction, every sexual act must be protected. And that's hard. That's very difficult. And that's what we need to get to, so that people understand that there isn't anything that will protect you except using safer sex and condom use and things like that.
Okay. Let's move over to you, Pastor Solomon. Now, you have been living with this condition for 23 years.
Yes.
Tell us your personal story.
Well, originally I'm from Ethiopia. I had a very difficult upbringing, and I was addicted to drugs and alcohols, and also have unprotected sex and dating different women. That is the time I was infected. It was 1992, 23 years ago.
Was this in Ethiopia?
No, it was in Kenya. I was Kenya by then.
Right.
And I was asking the doctor how long I'm going to live. He told me maybe 5 years. It was not easy. It was like, for me, the death sentence. Those days, there's no treatment, there's no ARVs, there's nothing. So if you know that you're HIV positive, you are going to die. That was spirit. That was, the final. But over the time, I overcome it. HIV AIDS, still there's a stigma attached to it. There's rejection.
We'll talk about stigma. I mean, perhaps let's hear from you. How easy was it for you to come out and tell people about your status?
Well, it was not easy. As I said, it's rejection, there is stigma attached to it, and so on and so forth. But I'm a preacher, and I serve God, and I have to serve people, and I have to obey the voice of God. When God spoke to me that you have to disclose your status. You see, there's a perception, even in the church, people, they are not open. They don't deal with, the real issue. You see,
how long have you been a preacher?
Since 1998.
What motivated you, if I could ask that question?
The same situation, because first I thought that I'm going to die. So according to the doctor, I'm supposed to die 1997. But 1998, I went Bible college, in Rema Bible College, and my perception was changed. The way I was thinking, I started to believe that I can live a long life. I can live a healthy life.
I see you've written a book. If I can just show it to the camera, and it's entitled "I Shall Live and Not Die." Do you want to perhaps just tell us a little bit about this book?
This book is talking in a spiritual aspect of it, and also in a medical aspect of it. I dedicate this book for those who are infected and those who are affected. So this book is going to restore those who lost hope, those who gave up. They think that, if I'm HIV positive at the end of the world, it's not. As long as you have the air to breathe. As long as you have a life in your body, you can experience, hope. You can have a dream. You can have a vision. I'm not only a living testimony. I don't have only a testimony. I'm a living testimony. So, it's all about a mindset, the way you think. It's not the end of the world. Okay,
well, very inspiring indeed. Well, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best in your future, work in this field of HIV/AIDS and bringing awareness and hope more than anything else to people.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go for a short commercial break, and afterwards we're going to be looking now at the problem of new infections and the prevalence of HIV. Please stay with us.
Globally, almost 6,000 people are newly infected with HIV daily. More than half of them are young people between 15 and 24 years old. In South Africa, girls and young women are the most vulnerable to HIV infection. That's because they are more likely to be raped or forced into sex. Poverty is driving young people, especially girls and women, into the hands of sugar daddies, which increases their risk of HIV infection.
I wanted to fit in because I come from a very poverty or rather destitute-stricken family, so I didn't have much things like my friends had. So I wanted to fit in, and I had to get myself a sugar mama.
I do date some young girls at an early age of 18 years, 17 years, as I'm 30 years of age now. The thing is, I normally waste my money to those little ones.
You get it from shipping, obviously not gonna use the condom. You can say, she's gonna say, hi, it's my first time. Okay, it's the first time. I'm gonna show you how to do it. They say, look at it. You're gonna look for the condom. You're pretending like you do have condoms in your room, but you don't even have it.
I don't want to lie to you. I never used condom. But when I wanted you, like almost like months and stuff like that.
You're hungry.
When I catch you, must I go look for condoms if I don't have in my room?
Sex with children under 16 is a criminal offense and is one of the drivers of HIV infection. Educating young people and raising awareness remains one of the crucial elements in reducing infections and to change irresponsible sexual behavior. The South African government has prioritized this challenge, and it is the actions of older men who prey on these vulnerable children that most concern authorities.
It's a societal problem. This one, especially this one of sugar daddies, it's a societal problem. We need parents to be much more organized to fight against this thing. We need communities, community organizations, we need the media, we need government, we must partner for the sake of our girl children.
A South African national study has found that the incidence of adolescent girls exchanging sex for money was reduced by 53% among families receiving regular child support or foster child grants. The grant system has also reduced the incidence of girls having sex with older men by 71%. A study of tertiary institutions has showed that 41% of students are infected with HIV. The study found that they are more likely to have unprotected sex after drinking. They also have more than one sex partner. Government has made an effort to create awareness among young people. It has launched the South African National Strategic Plan towards eliminating new HIV infections by 50% in 2016. The plan includes distributing 1 billion condoms every year, making sure that 80% of South Africans know their status, and providing medical circumcision to 4.3 million men. HIV and AIDS may not be a death sentence anymore as AIDS-related deaths drop, but the focus and challenge still remains to practice safe sex.
Welcome back. Now, to help us unpack this problem of the prevalence of HIV, well, maybe not so much the prevalence being a problem, but the problem of new infections, that is the new incidents, we welcome our special guest. First up is in our Johannesburg studio, Professor Jeffrey Sitzwe. Professor Sitzwe is the Deputy Executive Director in the HIV/AIDS STI/TB research program within the HSRC. Welcome to Health Talk, Prof. Sitzwe.
Thank you, Doctor.
And of course, next to Professor Sitzwe, we have Portia Sirote. Portia is the TAC's National Women's Representative. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
And in our Cape Town studio, we have Professor Glenda Gray, who's the president of the South African Medical Research Council. Welcome to Health Talk, Prof. Gray.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to come back to you in a minute, but I just want to start with Professor Sitzer. Prof, the issue of let's start with prevalence before we get to that contentious issue of the problems around new infections. Where are we in terms of prevalence now? What are the latest figures?
The prevalence, I think we need to explain that prevalence talks about the number of existing cases. It includes new cases and all the people who don't know when they were infected. They could have been infected 20, 30 or 40 years ago.
So it's a snapshot of what we have
It's
currently.
everything we have in the big box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Incidents would be new cases only that
Right.
were infected in the last 6 months or so.
Right.
The prevalence has been going up in South Africa. No wonder we have the largest number of people living with HIV/AIDS, because prevalence has been increasing, and it has been increasing in different age groups. And the inset was showing that the 15 to 24 have seen an increase in prevalence of HIV/AIDS, but it has been an increase in almost all age groups over the years. If one thinks that we started monitoring the epidemic in 1990, when we were under 2%, now we are at 18.8% among people aged between 15 and 49 years.
Right.
So the numbers are high.
Some people say that the prevalence increasing over time is not really a bad thing, but a reflection of the fact that more and more people are living longer because of the fact that we are on ARVs and
True.
so on.
The success of the ARVs means that people who would have died and banned the epidemic are not dying, they are living a lot longer. So the prevalence is not an issue, but incidence is a problem. If we are seeing many people getting infected with HIV/AIDS and we still see an increase in teenage pregnancies, we have to worry with incidence.
Well, talk about incidence. I mean, what we worry about mostly is the vulnerable groups. Just tell us a little bit about the vulnerable groups in this regard.
The vulnerable groups you have heard in the inset are mainly including young women and girls. Now the focus has been on the age group 15 to 24, but specifically 15 to 19, that even the latest statistics about Southern Africa are showing that a lot of teenagers are now dying of HIV/AIDS. Not only getting infected, but dying, which means they do get infected, they're not on treatment, and they don't get the benefit of the available treatment.
Portia, we've seen some disturbing testimonies from the clips that we've shown, which really talk to some of the reasons why we're seeing, the incidents being on the rise over a long period of time, especially involving young girls. Your thoughts on what we see?
What I would like to say first is that in the country, what we usually do, we talk more about rights and we don't talk more about responsibilities. And when awarenesses are done, yes, it is true, but they are not happening that much. I will talk about the age group that he has mentioned, the 15 to 24. Most of those are still in some of them are in primary schools, and some of them are in secondary schools, and some of them are in tertiary. What is happening, I will talk about the basic the Department of Education. They are limiting their education, and as much as they're doing that, they are forgetting that there are things, there are rights that are in place, and the children has to be responsible in making sure that they prevent themselves from getting infected. We have termination of pregnancy, right? That says children at the age of 12 years, they need to go and terminate without the consent of the parents. We also have the right to they also have the right to HCT to go and test once they understand the consequences of testing for HIV at the age of 12 years without the consent of a parent. It is not wrong. When they get infected, they have a right to go to school, of which is right. And again, they have a right to go to school whilst they are pregnant. My problem here is that the departments are not balancing as much as we tell these children about their rights, because what is happening, we tend to talk more about rights without talking more about responsibilities. All that they know and all that we all do as South Africans is knowing about our rights and forgetting about their responsibilities, because we only take what we need to hear. So as much as that is happening, we feel that as much as they are doing that, but we feel again that the rights of young girls and young boys are violated because
We'll come back to that, because I want us to talk more about, now you spoke about responsibility.
Yes.
I want us to come back to talk about risky sort of behavior amongst this age group. But let's cross over to Cape Town and then speak to Professor Glenda Gray. Prof, you know, for some of people that may not know, I mean, Professor Gray is a multi-award winning individual that we're proud of in this country, and especially around the successes that we've had insofar as transmission from mother to child is concerned. Firstly, your thoughts, before we get on to the incidents, your thoughts around the successes we've achieved insofar as, you know, transmission from mother to child is concerned.
Yeah, so South Africa has done extraordinarily well in driving down transmission into children.
Yeah.
And we have rates of under 2% at 18 months. And so this is extraordinary given our health system that is very burdened.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've achieved this is incredible. When I started working in HIV, every third child at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital had HIV infection. And now we look and see that we can start to count the infections that happen in children, you know, in hundreds instead of tens of thousands.
Right.
And so we're in a very good area in South Africa. We've managed to drive transmission rates in children down, and I do think that we will be able to eradicate pediatric HIV infection in the next 5 years as we fine-tune our regimens and make sure that we don't leave any pregnant woman or any HIV-exposed baby untouched during pregnancy and through breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So I do think that since 93 to 2015, such great gains have made, and it's so nice to, in my medical career, to experience an HIV epidemic that was hemorrhaging, pediatric HIV, and now to see children, less and less children becoming infected, and those who are becoming infected going on to treatment and becoming mothers. You know, it's a wonderful success story that we have in South Africa around
well,
mother
thanks to you for
transmission.
championing this, you know, prevention of mother-to-child transmission. If you know, we can put it this way, we've closed, or at least we're managing to close that tap in terms of incidents now. But we still have problems in terms of, you know, other areas, risky behavior amongst the youth. Your thoughts on that?
So I think that it's complex, you know. So we were hearing about young girls having sex with older men. It's very hard to negotiate safe sex when you're a young girl and your boyfriend is 8, 9 years older than you. And so there's a whole power dynamics. And so we need to find interventions that women can use that empower them. You know, behavioral interventions are not working. We need biomedical interventions that women can use, and they can use without the man's knowledge. So we need HIV vaccines, we need microbicides, we need long-acting antiretrovirals that you can put in your arm and no one can see it. And so we need to empower women who are most vulnerable. Young women are the seeders. They seed the infection. They then grow old and have babies and date men of their same age. And those men who get infected then have sex with younger girls. So we definitely have to try and make sure that the young girls who are at the highest risk for HIV and have high incidence rates, we start to find targeted interventions that will stop women in this age group getting HIV, because then we can prevent older women getting HIV and infecting their partners.
Yeah.
So we have to work in this area, and we need to have targeted interventions so that young girls are prevented from getting HIV.
All right. We've run out of time. Professor, just for the last 30 seconds or so, just comment on the issue of vulnerable groups at colleges and universities.
Vulnerable groups at colleges and universities are aged between 15 and 24. And we did not have interventions at the technical vocational education colleges. And we have to move very quickly. We have to introduce HIV counseling and testing. We have to introduce the colored condoms. We have to introduce other interventions for the prevention of HIV/AIDS. Okay. Otherwise, the statistics are bad because that target group has not been attended to in the past.
Well, thank you very much for your contribution, Prof.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to go for a short break. When we come back, we talk about the rollout of ARVs. Stay with us. Welcome to Health Talk. We're talking HIV and AIDS. Now, one of the greatest success stories is that we've achieved as a country. We have the biggest rollout program in the world on ARVs. Now, let's hear more about this from our special guests. We're joined by Dr. Farid Abdullah, CEO of the South African National Council, Dr. Nono Simelela, advisor in the presidency, and Portia Sorote from the TAC, National Women's Representative. We said that South Africa has the biggest ARV program in the world. Your comment?
Well, we have the biggest epidemic,
yeah.
So we should have the biggest program.
Yeah.
But what's remarkable is that if you look 10 years ago, you know, we were in darkness, shall I say?
Right.
And over time, government has made incredible commitments, and now we have great leadership in the form of the Minister of Health and other ministers. And now we have 3.2 million people on treatment.
Mm-hmm.
To put that in some sort of global perspective, as you know, UNAIDS released its global results yesterday. 20% of all people on treatment in the world live in South Africa.
Right.
So, you know, we are doing well by all accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in this country, when we do well, we don't claim that.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that we can be sure of, because the treatment has led to a decline in mortality and an increase in life expectancy. These are big changes,
Very
big positive changes.
Dr. Simelela, if I may ask what some people view as a controversial question. We're talking just now about the problem of incidence. And the fact that HIV/AIDS is HIV at least is no longer regarded as a death sentence. Some people believe that this actually is becoming a problem, in that people then believe that, oh, this is not a death sentence to be HIV positive, so it's not a big deal if I get positive, I'll be on ARVs and I'll live. Your comment on that?
Yes, I think, you know, the success we think can lead to complacency, but it's very important for everyone, you know, to understand that it's not as straightforward as that. You know, you don't want to be on treatment for the rest of your life, especially if there's a chance that you'll get other diseases. Then it means you're taking medication for a whole number of medical problems. So I think it's important for people that are negative to really strive to remain negative, so that we're able to support people who are ill, not just people who are requiring treatment. The costs will continue to increase, and we are constrained in terms of the economic outlook and things like that. So I think if we think in the bigger picture, then we really must encourage every single South African, those who are negative to strive to stay negative, and those who are positive to remain on treatment so that we can succeed.
You've spoken about something else, the cost. We know that over time, you know, the cost of ARVs has declined, and thanks to some of the advocacy around the TAC, Minister of Health, and so on. But is cost still an issue? And I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. I mean, there's people coming up saying, listen, you know, this whole thing of having a limit in terms of the CD4 count, I think as soon as you know that you're HIV positive, people should start treatment. And there's another school that says, listen, in fact, prophylactically, those that are HIV negative, especially, you know, in a situation where one partner is positive and the other is negative, some people saying, look, the negative one should actually go on ARVs. In terms of cost now, if that were to happen, would cost be an issue?
Yes.
Very simple answer,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, because that's not the only thing that we have to take care of financially.
Okay.
You know, there's a whole basket of things that government provides to the citizens, and all of that comes at a cost. So it's very important always to keep everything in the bigger picture perspective.
Okay.
And even if we were just to talk about access to treatment and ARV costs, the costs do become an issue. You know, Dr. Farid Abdullah and a few other colleagues have done exciting work that shows us that this epidemic will continue to cost us a lot of money. The decision we have to make is, do we want to spend more money now and try to save a bit later, or do we want to keep paying more and more? It's a lot of money, and that is what it is.
We're getting new infections, we're getting more people being on ARVs, and people live longer. It means that we're spending longer over time. That's a problem. TAC.
Yes.
I mean, you know, you've advocated for rollout of ARVs, and of course that has happened, you know, thanks to pressure from groups like yourselves. What's your position now?
My position is that, first of all, we should acknowledge that the Department of Health and with the Minister, they've done a very good job. The statistics that my doctor here is talking about, we don't believe that is a true reflection of everything, because most of the people that they are still counting in are people who have passed on, and the other people that they are counting in is that they've taken referrals to other clinics. You know, there is no tracking system, so there are people whom we are double counting, of which the more they go...
Is this in terms of prevalence, number of people that...
Yes,
that
on
treatment.
There are people who are taking treatment here, and then that person will just decide to go and take treatment there. And there is a filing system that is done recently by ORAM. Every time files are getting lost, you go to the facility every day, a new file is opened. So that statistics, I'm disputing it. That is the number of people that we have on antiretrovirals. But the
That's
thing is
interesting.
here,
Do we have an idea of the accurate statistics there?
I do not have, but we've done a research with Diamond Life, trying to find out, after we came from Australia, Melbourne, to try to find out, yes, we understand that South Africa is the best when it comes to the rollout of ARVs. But what we've learned again, it was that viral loads were not of the most, were not getting lower than detectable. We wanted to know and to find out what is the problem about that. But however, from that, we also found out that people are taking treatment everywhere, and every time you go to each and every facility, you are counted in. Then the problem that we have as a country is that we don't monitor, we don't evaluate, and we don't learn. We went to Melbourne, like I said, we've learned that viral loads are not getting lower and undetectable. We thought that maybe the minister will come down to where the actual things are really happening and try to find out why the viral loads of people are not getting lower than undetectable. Okay. We have the NSP that talks about treatment, care, and support. Are people supported psychologically, mentally?
Let's hear a response from government.
No. I think, yes, here I need to say we have challenges with data collection.
Right.
But we've got a system now, tier.net, and patients are being counted. I can acknowledge that we might not have accuracy in the number of people lost to follow-up. Right. We don't have a unique identifier, that's a fact. But viral loads are being done. And where they are being done, not all the time, we have up to 73% suppression. So that's good for a country like ours, really, that's good. So we want to get to a point where we get viral loads done and they are recorded so that we can know that we have suppression. So we do admit that there are challenges in data collection. We do admit that we don't have a unique identifier, and we need to work all of us together.
Working all of us together, it means look at the road ahead. Okay, we're going to go for a short commercial break. After the break, we'll now look at the road ahead. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Now we're looking at the road ahead. We're still with our guest, Dr. Farid Abdullah, CEO of the South African National AIDS Council, Dr. Nono Simelela, advisor in the presidency or the deputy presidency's office. And in our Cape Town studio, Professor Glenda Gray, president of the MRC. Perhaps let's stay with you, Prof. Gray. Let's look ahead now and talk about the issue. You mentioned briefly the issue of the vaccine. How far are we in terms of vaccine development?
In the next 5 years, we're going to see huge developments in HIV prevention, particularly around vaccines. Next year, we hope to start the first pivotal study to license an HIV vaccine. We're also looking at neutralizing antibodies as a way of preventing HIV acquisition, as well as long-acting antiretrovirals. So we're on the eve of great discovery, understanding how the immune system works and using our best tools to create the best vaccines. And so South Africa will be the lead in developing these new technologies. And so we can look forward to a lot of great and exciting work in that front. Rolling out universal test and treat is another way that South Africa will take a lead on combating HIV. And the best way to measure the effects of a population-based antiretroviral program is to look at lives saved. And as Dr. Abdullah said earlier, we have put 5 years of life on every South African, and that's because of antiretrovirals. And so there is huge impact at a population level. And so in terms of treatment, and the quicker we get people onto treatment, and the quicker we find prevention interventions that women can use, we can begin to start thinking about controlling the epidemic.
Any work done in the genetic environment insofar as prevention is concerned?
Yes, so we're starting to understand neutralizing antibodies, and in South Africa we have we look at people who are HIV infected and how their antibodies change over time, and we look at these neutralizing antibodies that people develop about 3 years into HIV infection, and using those antibodies we can clone monoclonal antibodies to try and use this as a tool for prevention. And so we have identified some potent neutralizing antibodies in South Africa that will be going into the clinic next year as well. And this will provide us an idea of what kind of neutralizing antibodies we need to either make a vaccine or to use as passive immunization. And so we understand a lot more about the interaction of the virus and the immune system, and a lot of this science is coming from South Africa and has helped us develop new strategies for HIV prevention.
Civil society often gets impatient with the pace with which science moves in trying to develop these novel ideas. Your comment on that?
It's very hard. I mean, we have a virus that is evolving rapidly and changing all the time. Yeah. And so we're just trying to catch up to the virus. And we have to understand how the immune system interacts with the virus. So it has taken us a long time. Also, technology has failed us in the past. And now that we have better structural biology, we can be able to now visualize the virus and look at the envelope of the virus. And so we're able to start looking at a molecular level, at a structural level, how HIV interacts with our immune system. And we never had that technology or those tools before. And so we had to develop technology in order to understand the structure and the components of the virus together with the immune system. We never had those kind of tools before. And now we are beginning to see at a molecular level, at a mucosal level, how HIV infection happens and what kind of immune system targeting we need to do at the vaginal level and at the penis level where HIV is acquired. So we're starting to understand that much better now and making huge strides. And we will see a revolution in terms of HIV understanding and knowledge over the next decade.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk to you again in 5 years' time and reflect on this discussion we've had. Right, let's get back to the vulnerable groups now, Dr. Simelela. 15 to 24-year-olds and so on. I mean, that's a problem area. Going forward now, what strategies can we put in place to try and curb the spread amongst this generation?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. I think a combination of things. We've got a big suite of prevention tools. But the challenge we have is how do we get all of that in the hands of young people who are on the move themselves, who are dealing with life, who are in different spaces. That's one of the things that we're trying to do. Very recently, we're working very closely with support from the United States government on a program called DREAMS that's going to help us put everything into one space and really try and track this young group of people who are extremely vulnerable. What's missing, I think, from some of the things we're doing is getting young boys and men to the party, because, you can equip young women and girls as much as you want, but they go back to situations and family environments that are not supportive. So we have to really look at ways in which we can bring parents into the equation, communities into the equation, the partners and the men who are also part of the solution.
Perhaps the mistake we did was, we continue to do, is to focus on the 15 to 24-year-olds as if, that's where the problem is. But in fact, we've seen that it's actually older adults that, engage with these younger ones and pass the virus. Anything that you think can be done in that regard?
Well, I think both Dr. Simelela and Professor Gray have referred to a cycle of infection. And we need to break that cycle. That cycle is older men of an average age of 27 or 28 who have liaisons with younger women, pass on the virus. These younger women are then seeing the burden of the disease. With time, they grow older, they have children, And when they reach the age of 26 or 27, then they seek life partners and transmit the virus to these life partners. So we need to break these cycles. As Dr. Simulela said, we need to find the men that are positive, put them on treatment.
Yeah.
We need to put prevention interventions in the hands of these young women, whether it's a pill or a vaccine or the ability to say no.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, we need so much time. We need to wrap our discussion. But before we do that, let me read a few tweets that have just come in. Beatrice Mahonga says, South Africa is treating not only South Africans, but people from neighboring countries who come here for free ARVs. Alabai Michael says, combating the HIV/AIDS pandemic will involve comprehensive preemptive approach to reducing cases. And then someone who calls himself or herself, Is This a Better Life, says, Minister Motsoaledi is doing great in that department, but individual choices and responsibility is vital. And then Lindo Gutle says, peer educators are needed, especially for informal settlements. People don't have information about HIV and AIDS. And Witas Jakeni, I think it says, our government is doing a really good job in fighting HIV/AIDS. Now, in order for one to start ARVs, the CD4 should be 350 or less. I think it meant to be higher. Anyway, Dio Zwax says, as long as there's poverty within our communities, I'm sorry to say government is fighting a losing battle. Well, I hope that's incorrect, because I hope it shouldn't be a losing battle. And to our guest in Cape Town, Professor Linda Gray, thank you so much for your contribution and all the best. And to our Johannesburg guests here, Dr. Nono Simulela, Dr. Farid Abdullah, Portia Serote, Pastor Solomon, thank you very much. Folks, it's on that note that we come to the end of our show today. You will join us again next week on SABC News when we come through to you. And remember that this show will be repeated on Tuesday morning at 5 o'clock. And I'm Dr. Salom Taung, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for watching our show. Till next time, please take care and goodbye.